Welcome into another edition of the day after Inside Carolina's uh, weekly Sunday show. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. They are the title sponsor of this show. Buck, we were talking off air as we were getting ready to roll, and I said, I felt like we've been here before. I felt like I've talked to you and Jason in this exact same scenario. Your overall thoughts so we can dig into this one.
Well, my thoughts went back to way before Jason and you and I were ever thought of doing this. My thoughts went back to 1996 in Charlottesville against Virginia. The only difference there is that both teams were pretty good in 96. Virginia was good, and North Carolina was good. But North Carolina just lost to an inferior team. And they came into the game. Jason and I talked off the air, and I said that Virginia came into the game with a plan, and Jason opined that North Carolina did not have a plan. I think that kind of sums it up. And the other piece that I'll add on the tail end of that is we talk a lot about counters in this podcast. And when Virginia did what they did, North Carolina didn't have a counter, and or they had one and didn't use it. Either way, that's my initial thoughts on the whole thing.
Jason, get in here. Like Buck said, plan versus no plan. Bottom line, it's a 31-27 inexplicable loss for North Carolina. I knew Buck was going to bring up 96 because I was thinking about 96. And my initial thought was going to be 96 has company. And we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But, Jason, initial thoughts after watching that one?
Yeah, I mean, so if any of the folks in the chat came into this game maybe a little hungover, whatever, I kind of understand it because the team you watched last night looked hungover too. That game, Virginia took the fight to Carolina from play one. They came out more physical, came out absolutely determined to make this a football game. And I thought North Carolina came in still partly in the Miami game. I mean, they did not look like they came in with the same kind of physicality and just if you watch the defense in this game, they were not playing with their hair on fire the way that they have in a few games this year. And I thought offensively there was just a bit of disjointedness, and I didn't think they were especially physical on the offensive line at different points. This just looked like a team that came in unprepared, frankly, and a team that had not come in fully ready to compete in this game. And that's what we talked about on the game plan podcast. I mean, the one thing we did get right in the game plan podcast was when we said, well, there's a lot of similarities in between this game, the setup, and last year's Georgia Tech game.
Yep.
Well, looks like Lucy took the football away again, right? I mean, this was very much the Georgia Tech game last year again, where you're coming in, you're rolling, you're in a good spot, and you just lay an egg. You're not prepared to hit back against a team that punches you a couple times early, gets you reeling a little bit, and you're not ready to respond with the kind of physicality and Buck, you mentioned a couple of the counters. I don't even know that you needed counters in this game, but how many times did Hampton touch the ball in the last 30 plays?
He had 5 carries in the second half, so not many.
I mean, I think he had something like 5 touches in the last 30 plays. So, I mean, it's not even just about counters. It's about like, look, that guy was running with success through most of this game, and yet you go up 24-14, and then he barely touches it from there. So, understand what you do well in that game. Understand what you're not doing well, and what that certainly was not pass protection. So understand where you are and just go ahead and run that game out. Ride the running game a bit more, I'm not sure why they didn't just go ahead and hand the ball off. And then if they're going to load it up a little bit, run some read game stuff. Get Drake Maye using his legs a little bit. If they're going to load it up and really try to key on Hampton and run that game out, because you're struggling throwing the football and struggling especially protecting Drake Maye. I mean, you go all the way to the final play of the game. Why did that interception happen? It's because they gave up yet another hit on the quarterback. He was playing hurried the whole game, and yet that was the way that they set this up. I just think this was a systemic failure on like 4 levels. I mean, in terms of players being ready to play, in terms of some scheme stuff on both sides of the ball, they got out schemed. In terms of special teams, there was like
184 hidden yards.
184 yard differential in hidden yards in field position.
Well, we gave them a field goal on one occasion just because we couldn't punt the ball.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was a failure across every level of the North Carolina football program. That's it in a nutshell to me.
Yeah, that's we always talk about, and Max talked about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot. You play 12 plus games, however many you play. You're going to get max effort, max focus from your players on 4 or 5 of them. It's those other ones you have to find out a way to win. And Buck, reflecting back to your column from Friday, and to Jason's point, and looking at the game, you're up 24-14. Virginia can't stop Hampton. He's got 6 yards of carry, which is, you take that all day, every day, and they quit doing it. You see a team that is struggling to be focused. Guys are dropping passes. We mentioned off there, Nate McCullum dropped more passes yesterday than he's dropped in his entire career. It happens. It can't happen, but it happens. But when you're doing something that's just as easy as handing the ball off to 28 and you don't, to Jason's point, Buck, that's the failure that I saw out there. There was no bailout for guys or players just having a rough day. You got to press the right button to just try to figure it out. Across the nation yesterday, teams figured it out. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm going to jump in here for a second, just to build on that point of Omari and Hampton. Hampton averaged 5.9 yards per carry in this game. Okay? Here are his 5 second half carries. 1st and 10, run for 18. 1st and 10, run for 8. 2nd and 2, run for 6. 1st and 10, run for 0. 2nd and 10, run for 4. And that last one was with 8:51 left in the 4th quarter, and he did not run the ball again in the game. This is not a situation of Virginia started figuring it out and managed to kind of force him to do something else. This is his last 5 carries went for 18, 8, 6, 0, and 4. And then he just didn't touch it again. When you're up, you're winning the game at that point.
Buck, get in. Run the damn ball did not happen.
Yeah, it did not happen. And, there were other things they could have done as well. I think there was room for getting Caleb Hood in the game, particularly in the passing game. Throw more passes to the backs in space. I think that could have helped. I think they could have gone to their tight ends a little bit more. There were things they could have done besides hand the ball to Hampton, even though he ran the ball only 19 times. He's not going to run it 50 times, right? You're not going to run a guy 50 times in a game, which is that's not what Virginia did, but they ran everybody they had in their backfield, double-digit times. And they ended up with 54 rushes. Was it 54, 58?
Yep. 54 for 228.
You're not going to run Omari and Hampton 54 times. But you could have gotten other players maybe involved in the game, especially, backs in the passing game instead of having to run the ball. Something short to the backs or something that to somebody on the edge that's as good as a running play. Things like that would have helped a lot. But obviously you can't run Hampton 50 times, but you could have done other things to have run the ball and matched the production that Virginia was getting in the running game. Stopping the run was just as important, and which is North Carolina's done that this year, and Virginia's not run the ball on anybody. They're averaging like 99 yards a game. I think they may have ran the ball well on William and Mary, but I don't think they brought William to that game. So,
we may not. You were just saying, Tommy. You look at the situation of carries of Omarion Hampton. You're right. We can't say, oh well, they should have run him 54 times, right? But you know how many rushing attempts Virginia had collectively?
54.
Yeah.
Omarion Hampton would have had 30 at least.
Yeah. You could have given Omarion 30, and then
agreed. But
and then
you have to get other people involved, and I think there are ways to do that.
Yep. I just think they came in really unprepared for what they saw, and I got a text from my dad last night saying, you really should have seen this coming a bit more. I've been watching some Virginia coming into this one, and they've been bad, but they've improved every week, and they've been figuring out who they are, and they've been getting more physical and all of that. And it's like, well, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
But that may be true, and look, they have been getting better. They've won their last 2 games now, but you look at what this game was, and this was Paris Jones getting 4 carries for 67, Mike Hollins getting 15 carries for 66, Tony Muskett, the running quarterback, gave him fits, given for 12 carries for 66 yards. Kobe Pace, 11 carries for 30 yards. And collectively as a team, 54 carries for 228 yards, 3 scores, and a 4.2 yards per carry average. Sack adjusted 4.6. And then Carolina, sack adjusted rush yards, 5.6 yards per carry. But the difference is 29 rushes as collectively, including sacks.
Yeah. We a lot of times we talk about play calling and all that. You got to run the football.
This is less about play calling than just having the plan of like, this is a head coach getting on the headset and also coming into the week saying, look, they've had trouble stopping the run. This is what we're going to do. We're going to pound it. Not even about.
If only I had thought of that at some point last week.
I can't imagine what column you'd have written if you had thought about running the ball against
Virginia. And you're right. They should have had a better plan. They should have had a better plan to run the ball against Virginia. But the thing that is concerning is that once the passing game began to show some serious cracks in terms of people dropping passes, and it wasn't as obvious in some cases. Like Devontae Walker had 11 catches, but he was targeted 18 times. That's not typical for Walker, and the other guys on the receiving end of the ball from Drake. Lots of them had drop passes. I mean, obviously we know Nate McCollum, but several of the guys like J.J. Jones, he had 10 targets and only caught 5 balls. So it wasn't just the drop balls, though. Drake he didn't, like in baseball terms, he didn't have his best stuff last night, really, right? So, that was showing up. He was just missing people. Sometimes I didn't know who he was throwing the ball to. And once that started happening, once you could see that, and the drops were contagious, at that point, maybe you should have made an adjustment and said, hey,
That's it.
maybe we should run the ball a little bit more because what we're trying to do is not working. So I think it's both not having that plan to run the ball going in, and the other part is once what you were trying to do was sort of falling apart, maybe you should have gone back to the drawing board a little bit, started calling a few more runs. So there's that.
Yeah,
And I want
I
to mention Garrett Clemens here for a second in the chat. He talking about field position, and that was something that we saw all night long. They had field position for most of the night, and a lot of that was their punting. Their punter was averaging over 50 yards, a kick, and North Carolina was under 40, and on one occasion under 20. So the field position game and the failure to make adjustments, all of that played into it. But I think you can look at those individual things, which for the most part start to get the feel of being a symptom. But the overall disease was, I think, maybe as Jason referred to at the top of the show, which was they were still hung over from the high of beating Miami the way they did
and the
week before.
physicality of that game.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think they came into this, as a team that had not fully recovered from how not just emotional but physical that football game was.
One thing that I always listen to all the pressers, but I listened to Tony Elliott after that, and he said his guys. He talked about the last year. I mean, they haven't beaten the FBS team in a year. Now we know what's going on at Virginia since then, and it's been hell for that program. But he talked about a lot about deserving stuff, and he said a lot of people think these kids deserve something. He said, but it's not about what you deserve. It's about what you earn every week. And I mean, he was obviously happy. But Jason, despite all of what we've already talked about, you've got the ball with 4 minutes left, I believe it was, and then with a minute and some change left. What an opportunity to win the game in spite of it all. And it kept feeling like, to me, like this is going to be, it wasn't on Josh Downs, but everybody remembers Josh Downs' catch or non-catch against Georgia Tech. It felt like that. What do you see in the last two drives from North Carolina? Is it just more of the same? I mean, what was going on there? In spite of it all, they had it on their – you could not ask for a better scenario than to have that game on your generational quarterback, and had it twice. Couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I thought more than anything, it was just a matter of the protection kept breaking down.
Yeah.
They couldn't protect him. And I thought on the 4-minute drive, I thought that was one where watching it live, and this is one of those things, you guys know, I try not to second guess if I'm not actually making the judgment during the game, if I'm not having that thought like before the play, then I don't want to just judge by results. And this is one where I'm not second guessing. I'm first guessing because I know what I was thinking during the drive. My thought during the 4-minute situation was, okay, you got 4 minutes. You got enough time here to stay balanced. And they've been pressuring your quarterback. So what do you have? What do you have up in your bag to make sure you use a little bit of run? You just tempo it, but you run the ball a little bit. You tempo it, and you make sure you're doing what you can to keep the defense off balance. You can't let him pin back and come after him, because if you just try to throw it, you're probably going to have some trouble. You just have all night. And you go down the list of that drive. Let me pull up the plays here. You go down the list of that 4-minute drive, and Drake Maye passed complete deep left for Tyshawn Chapman. Okay, 33 yards, great start. Then complete short middle to Devontae Walker, great start. And then 1st and 10, Drake Maye sacked. Second and 12, Drake Maye incomplete pass. 3rd and 12, Drake Maye incomplete pass deep left. 4th and 12, incomplete pass short. 4 straight incompletions at that point. And at a certain point, once that first and 10 went down, you still have what three? It was about 340 at that point.
Plenty of time.
To me, when they got to that sack, and now they're 2nd and 12, I'm sitting there going, okay, what do you have to try to get back to reasonable yardage? How can you get out of this long yardage? Because long yardage was a problem for them all night. Because Virginia kept dropping back with, they played soft over the top with the coverage on certain stuff. And Carolina didn't do a great job getting off single coverage when they had it, but they did a great job of essentially making it difficult for Drake to have big windows to throw it into and not having stuff downfield while bringing some pressure. And they kept winning at the point of attack. This is an offensive line that struggles to pass block. And when they're in those long yardage pass first situations, they kept giving up a lot of pressure, and Drake had trouble. And it doesn't help when you have a couple drops. So to me, that was where, again, first guessing it, my thought is, okay, what do you have to get back to 3rd and 6? 3rd and 4. And then you can play ball. And I thought that was one of those things that just kept coming up in this game is they get into long yardage and then start to struggle. I'm looking here. What's the average third down and distance to go for Carolina was 6.5. And they were 0 for 4 on 3rd and longs. So they had 4 third and longs that were 3rd and 9 or more. They were 0 for 4 on those. They were 4 for 5 on 3rd and short. That's 3rd and 4 or less. So problem is they had a bunch of 3rd downs that were, 3rd and 5 or more in this game. And they struggled on those. And they came into the season it came into this game as the number 1 team in the country, I believe, or number 1 team in FBS as on 3rd down conversions, but they struggled to protect and then struggled to execute in the passing game just in general. They were 1 for 9 on 3rd down in this game passing the football, which, I mean, if you looked at the numbers coming in, Drake Maye on 3rd down was by far the best numbers in the country.
It's phenomenal.
And so you can, I mean, here's where I'm going to step back and take another angle on this. And I'm going to say, from the coaching staff perspective, I understand why they would just say, let's just keep throwing it on, okay, 3rd and 7. Let's just throw it again. Like, let's just do what we've done all year. Because look, I mean, this can't keep going on, right? I mean, Drake's not just going to keep missing guys. Guys aren't going to just keep dropping it. We've been able to do this all season. Let's just do what we do. And I get that part. I mean, that's the part as a coach where you say, look, we're going to bounce back. This is what we do. We're going to keep being able to do this. The problem is, and this is the balance as a coach, when do you decide tonight's just not that night? We got to take a slightly different approach because we're not doing what we normally do in 3rd down passing. We're not getting the time. We are dropping the football. What do we need to do that's a little different? And that's the hard balance of coaching. And this is where I don't want to give this staff a pass. But if you are looking at, why didn't they do it differently? They've been the best passing team on 3rd down in the country coming into this game. And then that's the thing that fell apart. The thing that I would say is just you need to notice a little bit earlier that your guys are just a little bit out of sorts, out of sync on that, and downshift and figure out what you need to do to make sure you win despite not having your good stuff on that. And that's what I think they didn't do well. And I thought the first drive, by the way, was I watched the first 4 plays. That first drive, I went, uh-oh. I don't know about you, Buck. Did you do the same thing?
I was going to say that I kept trying to think. I was thinking about, hey, I'm going to jump in on top of Jason here. But, at some point, you've got to look down at the stat sheet and see that you've had 4 3-and-outs. Somebody asked that question in chat, how many 3-and-outs we had. And if you've got 4 3-and-outs, you've got to decide, you've got to figure, hey, we're having a little trouble doing our normal thing tonight. We need to go back to a different way of trying to get that third down than what we're doing, which is not working and is resulting in lost possessions, which some ways a 3-and-out is, so, when you get that many 3-and-outs, which I would say that's probably the most they've had this season. I'm just off the top of my head. I don't know that, but they had 4 3-and-outs. And Virginia's defense, this is not the 85 Bears,
There's the line. Cross that one off your bingo, everybody.
I mean, they're not the greatest defense in the country. You should be able to move the ball on them and stay ahead of the chains. So, at some point they needed to actually get take a hard look at what they're doing and how it's working. And those two things don't match up. You need to try to do something else if you're going to try to win the game. The fact that they still had a chance to win the game at the very end is surprising, but also Virginia was 24-point underdogs for a reason. They're not a very good team. And it's not surprising that the favorite in the game had a chance to win at the end when they were that big of a favorite. So,
and frankly, they shouldn't have had a chance to win because they got
14 points gifted to them, basically.
They got the break of all breaks with the fumble going into the end zone and through the end zone, which is the most.
And they picked one in the end zone.
Yeah. But the pick was just a really good defensive play. I mean, that was textbook on how to cover that. So, a little bit less of a break, and you made your break there. The other one, I mean, that was just flat out a phenomenal, like unbelievable gift from the gods kind of break.
Yeah.
Where, you get the ball fumbled going into the end zone and rolling through the end zone. And that, by the way, is 2 weeks in a row where you've had a running back fumble going into the end zone on the one, inside the 1 yard line. This week that doesn't happen. Virginia wins this game by 10 points
or more.
Virginia was a better football team out there on Saturday, and that was the thing that was honestly really surprising to me as somebody who's, as analysts, we don't get everything right. I think we do a pretty dang good job. And on this one, I was really surprised to see Virginia just look like the better team. If you not told me what the record of those two teams was coming into this game, I wouldn't have thought that was the situation.
I agree. I said, and before we flip script, talk about the defense, I said last week we'd find out about this North Carolina team in these next 2 weeks. And to your point, Jason, Virginia looked better prepared, executed better, and looked like the better football team for a large portion of the night. And to get that gift that you said, the gift of the gods, the ball bouncing through the end zone, and then not capitalize on it after everything that had gone wrong, is just tough to watch. It's tough for the fan base to watch. I will say, Trav in the chat needs to stop spamming the chat. I mean, there's a lot of people in here, but say something constructive or whatever. Just stop spamming the chat. But anyway, anything left on the offensive side before I take a break, come back and talk about the North Carolina defense, because I think there's some stuff to go around there as well. Anything left offensively, Jason? But
not that wouldn't be beating a dead horse.
Exactly.
That horse is dead.
Dead and bloated. Talk about Johnny T-shirt, JohnnyT-shirt.com. They can make you feel better in the morning when you go by there and you visit them, and you're greeted with great customer service. Nice folks there, alumni owned and operated. They've got everything you need North Carolina related, online or in person. Go see them. Smiling face will help you in person, make you feel better, and they'll help you get exactly what you need. jerseys, basketball jerseys, football jerseys, anything. Visit them at on East Franklin Street, or visit them online. It's Johnny T-shirt, of course, great sponsors of this podcast. And if you're a premium subscriber, which if you're in the chat and you're not, you might want to get that, because I can imagine some film breakdowns from Mr. One Jason Staples will be interesting this week. Check them out and you get that 10% off. National Guys Pay the Bills. It's the day after. Okay. Buck Sanders, I'm going to come to you. It's Inside Carolina's day after. Of course, I mentioned Johnny T-shirt already. The defense. Virginia had not run the ball for an average of 100 yards on the season, and the defense just could not find it. Jason mentioned it earlier. They had 3 guys with 66 yards. Paris had 67, but rushed the ball for 228 yards. Buck, is it another focus thing? Is it a not taking them seriously? I mean, what'd you see from the North Carolina defense, especially on the ground, that just prevented them from getting Virginia in any tight situations offensively, it felt like?
Well, for one thing, their quarterback ran the ball better on North Carolina than I think any other quarterback has this year. I don't know how that was. Maybe they just didn't concentrate on his ability to run the ball. Several points I was looking at watching the game, and North Carolina had held their passing to like 150 yards, and late the third quarter, early fourth quarter. And so they were shutting down the pass for the most part. But and I think Chapman, he's playing a lot. Holloway didn't play much in this game. I think Holloway only got like 6 snaps, and Chapman played like almost the entire game. And I think he played pretty well as on top of that. I think the secondary played pretty well there, except, how many times do you remember hearing Elijah Hussey's name called last night? Not a lot. And so maybe that's a good thing for most players in the secondary, but how many games has it been this year where Hussey didn't make a difference-making kind of play, an interception, drop dead tackle at the line of scrimmage, or make his presence felt in some particular way? That doesn't really speak to the issues that the defensive line had, and they had them. And this looked like the defensive line from the App State game. They just could not get anybody on the ground. It just was a disaster. This is the old UNC defensive line we're all used to seeing from last year, just getting gashed over and over and over again and not being able to ever stop a drive because they just can't stop the run. I don't have an explanation for it. If I did, I'd knock on Mack's door and ask for 6 figures to give him the solution. But for whatever reason, they just reverted to type and just could not stop anybody, no matter what their name was, whether it was Jones or Hollins or Musket or Pace or any of them. They couldn't stop any of them. So I think that's the game in a nutshell. I mean, the 2 things is North Carolina not running the ball, even though they could, and not being able to stop Virginia from running the ball.
We've talked about snap counts and all that, and North Carolina's done a really excellent job, I think, on the season, not having guys with so many snaps in a game. Jason, you see how many snaps Rucker had last night?
I haven't yet. What was it?
86 snaps for Kamen Rucker.
That's a bit much.
That's a bit much, and I think you could tell a little bit late that he was run down. Miles Murphy, 52, Kevin Hester, 50, especially, to your point, coming off that game against Miami when it was just a physically and emotional game.
Well, Rucker had 65, I think, against Miami.
Yeah, but that's 21 more. That's still too many.
Yeah, that's, that's a lot.
If I could jump in for just a second. One thing that I did think about in terms of being able to stop the run just occurred to me as I was watching the game is that I thought Virginia did a really good job of using tempo. They tempoed the crap out of North Carolina's defensive line. They would barely let them get set before they'd snap another play. So and you could see what made me think of that is she's talking about the snap counts. They had 87 snaps. Of course, they had the ball for 37 minutes over North Carolina's 24 or whatever it was. But I thought they did a really good job when they had the ball to get to the line quickly and snap the ball. And North Carolina, I don't think has seen a lot of that tempo heavy kind of offense this year before now.
Since App State. Jason, what was the issue for North Carolina's defensive front? Mack called out the front seven specifically in the post game. I mean, I have no explanation, so I'll turn to you to give us one. North Carolina just could not handle Virginia, whatever they did. Virginia had a bye week, and they changed some things up. That's obvious. And on offense, we could say they should just run the football. But on defense, what'd you see, Jason?
Well, I think most of the yardage that they got in the running game was on, the same basic stuff. They ran a ton of outside zone, and they had a lot of success on outside zone. And I need to take a look at what the actual numbers are. I'm going to pull those up the next time Buck's going on what the difference, how many yards they gave up on outside zone versus everything else. But they just absolutely struggled to handle things on outside zone. And then when they started to get a little bit of they get one play where they're in position on outside zone, and that's when the quarterback would pull it, and it'd be outside zone read. And then you get the quarterback running with nobody within sight for 5, 6, 7 yards, and they just were able to stay on schedule. One of the things, and I thought actually there was one run play, and I don't remember exactly when it was. It was the second or third touchdown. I think it was the third touchdown for Virginia, where the back was hit at the about 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, somewhere in there, and then just got about 7 yards after contact, just broke that tackle, and then just kept his feet moving, went 7 yards after contact, and then scored on that play from about the 9-yard line or whatever. I need to find that play. That's one I think I'm going to probably break down. But that play sort of typified things of even when they did get to the ball carrier, they got to the ball carrier and did not lay the lumber. Virginia's running backs, they were the hitters in this game. Virginia was able to consistently not fall forward, but break a tackle and then fall forward. And Carolina had trouble getting people on the ground. There were a lot of missed tackles in this game, and there was a lot of yards after contact in this game. So you pair that with, I thought the defensive line had a very hard time. I didn't think they got off blocks well at all in the outside zone. And the thing about outside zone is it's really easy to get passive when you're playing against outside zone, because the whole goal of outside zone on the offensive side is you're taking a big step to one side or the other. Everybody is. And then you're just trying to get movement horizontally. And if you don't get the edge set on the outside by the defensive end to where it's just a hard edge, then the whole line of scrimmage is just going to keep moving until a seam develops, and then the back is going to cut where something opens up. So if you get too much penetration from one spot and not enough from another, then that's going to open a seam. If one guy is able to, keep moving and to try to stay in his gap, but does it too much, he gets washed, and that opens up another seam. What you have to do is you have to be able to hold your ground and stop that horizontal movement without losing your spot, without giving up your gap. That's a lot easier said than done. And Carolina didn't do it very well. And the other thing that I thought just overall they were too passive on defense in terms of their approach when Virginia did start getting the running game going. Where they had some success, they brought up a safety into the box, and they got some aggressiveness up front to get after the quarterback, to have the extra +1 for the pull and really turn that front seven loose and run blitz and do some of that stuff. They did some of that, but I thought they did. I thought they didn't do enough of it. This is a game where, again, we knew coming in. How many guys caught the ball for them, Tommy, on the year? I mean,
2, basically.
Yeah. They had 2 guys who did anything in the passing game all season. And in this game, you had one guy with 12 catches. Then you had the H-back, fullback type guy, Sackett, with 3 catches, and nobody else with more than 1.
They did the same thing over and over all night.
Yeah. So it seemed to me that defensively, Carolina was willing to let Virginia basically set the terms and dictate, rather than saying, okay, so this is what your plan's going to be. All right, fine. We're going to take that away and we're going to dictate to you. And if it takes putting 9 in the box and single covering every guy you have, going 0 and just saying, beat us over the top, you're not going to be able to do this anymore. And this is one of those things that actually I'm getting more frustrated watching more college football these days by defensive coordinators who refuse to do that. To me, if you've got a team where the quarterback's a little, he's not 100% reliable. You've got one wide receiver you worry about, and everybody else is not really that scary. You know what? There's time and place in football to say, you know what? If you're going to beat us. 80 yards, fine. We'll be willing to give up a couple big plays, but you're not going to keep doing this that you've been able to do to us all game. Take that one thing away. And I didn't think Carolina did that. I did not think that Carolina decided at a certain point, okay, screw it. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put 9 in the box. We're going to eliminate safety help, and we're going to one-on-one because we think we can do that with these guys. We're going to force them to beat us another way. They didn't make that change. And I thought by, third quarter, when Virginia was starting to continuing to have success in the running game there, it's like, okay, look, you gotta shut that down. If it takes being a little more aggressive than you're comfortable with, sometimes that's what you got to do. And that was my take on it. And, second watch may be corrective for me on that, but that was my take as I was watching it.
Yeah, it is. We always hear about adjustments. You never hear about just totally scrapping whatever plan we had and let's do something totally different during a game. Maybe it's not possible, but to your point, Jason, Virginia did the same thing over and over and had a lot of success, and it was never figured out. Buck, we're 45 minutes in. We've talked about this one. I don't know how much more you can say about this game. People are hammering special teams. We talked about the punter. I mean, Tom McGinnis is brand new. This is the first time he's done it. He came in, he played well against Miami, struggled. They put in Cole Maynard. How many times on a season do you see teams lose a starting punter, lose a starting kicker, and maybe now lose, a second kicker? I don't know. Jones mentioned that as well, but you got to figure it out on special teams. You got to have somebody that can punt the ball decently or just go for it every time and play the score-tastic or the stats and go for it. But, Buck, what's left here for North Carolina after this game? I think we'd be remiss to say they have one loss. The ACC championship game is still in their hands. You got a trip to Georgia Tech, who, Buck, I know that's your favorite trip ever, is going down to Atlanta and watch Georgia Tech football. There's so much left to play for.
I can't wait for it to be a noon game. That'll be perfect. There'll be like 5,000 people in the stands down there in Atlanta. I think we could go on and on, but as I want to say, I think we've plucked all the feathers off this turkey. And instead,
Bingo.
what we need to be
That's another bingo. I need 2 more for my bingo so I can stand up and say bingo.
High discipline.
I could have said that Cayman Rucker has got a lot of dog in him. is what I could have said. But
Bingo.
but I think what we need to do for people that don't know, that's an inside joke. That's what Jason. He was doing his Buck Sanders impression on the radio yesterday. I think what we should be talking about at this point is we already know that North Carolina has a tough time handling success, right? I think they've played since '98. They've played 6 games now, I think, as a top 10 team and lost 5 of them. Or maybe if they've played 7 and they've lost 6 at this point. But they just cannot seem to get over the hump of getting into the Big Ten, top 10, and staying there. But the
little Freudian slip there, Buck. Big Ten.
Well, they may be getting the Big Ten easier than they can get into top 10. But the point we need to be talking now is how are they going to handle failure? Because this was a complete system failure, what we saw last night. So how are they going to finish the season? How are they going to handle this failure? And we saw how that played out last year. Whether that was 100% what was going inside their head, but after they lost to Georgia Tech, all the wheels went off and all the air went out of the balloon for the Carolina season. How they respond to this game is going to be more important than us talking about the results of last night. They've got to go down to Georgia Tech and they've got to right the ship somehow. How to go about that, we'll be talking about that all week. All of us will at Inside Carolina. But that's the thing that's the big concern now. They can't handle success. Are they going to be able to handle failure? That's the point.
No noon game at Georgia Tech, but 8 o'clock, 8 p.m.
Oh, my God.
ACCN,
no doubt. There we go.
There you go.
Right.
Jason, wrap us up here. Looking forward, Carolina 6-1. Like I mentioned earlier, destiny still within their own hands. They're not at the point where you have to worry about other teams helping you out. The people are devastated or whatever about the college football playoffs not an option anymore. Let's stay in the present, folks. This is North Carolina football. Jason, they've got a lot to play for. I love Buck's point. How do they handle failure? Because Mack always talks about it's easier to coach up the negative portions after you win. But I think when you lose, you learn a lot about people to see how they can take the criticism without being able to say, yeah, we won anyway. Your take here going forward for North Carolina for this staff, because I think this was the failures of Saturday were not on one player. They were on the program. And I think we saw that. You've talked about that. Close us out.
Yeah, the biggest thing to me is that this team needs to reassess where they are in terms of, are they going to be a team that dictates to the opposition what they're going to do? Are they going to? I mean, we talked about this in the game plan podcast. If the motivation to play physical football and to come 100% committed each week is a struggle for you. If you need help getting motivated, then maybe this game isn't for you. And that turned out to look like some of the problem in this. I'm curious to see what happens to that motivation and to whether or not this team is going to continue to make strides in being the physical aggressor and dictating on offense and defense to the opposition what they're going to take away and what they're going to do. And Georgia Tech is a team that can beat you. So I mean, I've said all year, this North Carolina team, as long as you got Drake Maye on your team, and that group of wide receivers, especially once you got Tez out there as well, this is a North Carolina team that can beat anybody. But they're not good enough, and especially in the trenches, they're not good enough where you look at that schedule and nobody on that schedule. I mean, other than Campbell, I'm not sure Campbell can beat them, but outside of Campbell, there's nobody left on the schedule that can't beat you. I mean, they could lose out, but they also could win out, right? The odds that they win out are pretty slim, but this is a team that you've got to decide, okay, look, we're not going to let this sort of thing happen again. And, you know, Georgia Tech's been a pretty physical team this year. They're going to look at what Virginia did, and they're going to bring a lot of the same plan. And they're a team that also doesn't really throw the football very well. But they will test you in the running game. They're going to test your manhood. So are you going to answer that bell? And then you play Duke. And Duke is a good football team. So far this year, Duke's been a better team than North Carolina. They've been more complete on both sides of the ball, and they are really good up front. You're going to have to bring your A game to be able to stop Duke running the football. Duke ran the football decent against Clemson. They ran the football pretty well against Notre Dame. They ran the football well last night against Florida State. So you better strap up and be ready to stop the run against them in a couple weeks. And this is where you're going to have to figure out what they've got to do, or what you've got to do to be in position to win those games down the stretch against teams that are going to be better up front, that are going to challenge you on both sides of the ball in that. And, you know, this is where the coaching staff's going to have to earn their money, earn their paychecks, because the schedule does get a lot harder from here after Georgia Tech. And we talked about that again this week. Schedule's not getting easier from here. After Georgia Tech and Campbell, it gets real.
Indeed, it does. North Carolina falls to Virginia 31-27 in a game that, if you're a Carolina football fan, you have seen before. I often say, and I'm going to check the last bingo box, I've seen that movie before. We saw it on Saturday in Kenan Stadium. We'll see. I know that the fan base is in the here we go again mode after last year and now this game this year, but North Carolina has the opportunity to right the ship in Atlanta in the big ATL at 8 p.m. against Georgia Tech on Saturday night. Buck, it was great seeing you. I first must, before we get out, and Buck, I want you to comment on this. Shout out to all the people that come and talk and chat up the Inside Carolina tent and all that. You know, Jason and I even had wonderful folks come ask, when's Jason Staples ever coming down to the Bowls lot? So, you know, they wanted to talk to us, but they wanted to see Jason Staples. Shout out to everybody. Jeff Polly, I'll give you a shout out. The sky's not falling, my friend. It is. The sun will come up today and tomorrow. It was great to see you in the chat and in the Bowls lot as well. Buck, speak to the fans, the Inside Carolina fans, about the support we get down there. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, Tommy's already mentioned we had a Jeffrey Polly's fixture in these chats, and we had a chance to meet him and his wife. They're from Kentucky. Drove down to the game yesterday. I think their daughter plays lacrosse, I believe, if I'm right, for Lynchburg. And they were playing, let me see, Meredith in lacrosse yesterday. So, or today, I guess they're playing them. But anyway, it was great to meet Jeffrey and his wife, and wonderful to meet people from just wherever. And, you know, it's warms our heart that you guys give us a listen every Sunday morning, and at other times, you know, we really appreciate you. We couldn't do it without you, and we couldn't do it without our sponsors. And have we taken care of them today, Tommy?
We're about to do it. I was going to let you tee it up and lead it in, because I was going to talk about, not only does Inside Carolina have great fandom and great followers, and it's always awesome to see people, but we have great sponsors. I mentioned Johnny T-shirt earlier, and I'll mention Congruity. As many people as come into North Carolina to watch football games, you need to take a moment to go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. And if you're a small or mid-sized business owner, this is your opportunity to get a free assessment for all the things they can do for you. They're North Carolina-based. It's a national company. They're huge. They've done great work. You don't become a national brand and a national company without being really good at your job. Congruity is that. Darren and Matt and their team give you personalized experience, local service straight from this state. They empower your small and mid-sized business, like I said, HR and payroll outsourcing, so that you can take care of growing your business while they take care of those people that we talk about all the time, with the top of the line technology, and just like everything that we associate with here at Inside Carolina, great customer service, and they'll transform your organization through the good times and bad. Congruity doesn't care if Carolina wins or loses. They only care about building your base and building your business. So check them out at congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Learn more about it. Fill out the form, get your free assessment, and get in on the game that Buck Sanders just talked about. Great to associate with Inside Carolina. Great to have them be a sponsor of this show as well. Their logo's on the board. But it was a cool day. But I must say that pretty days don't make for pretty football. North Carolina heads to Atlanta 6-1, with an opportunity to handle business in a place, a house of horrors. No better place to be in Atlanta than 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday night when you got to win.
We're 2-10 down there, so we should be all excited. In the last 10 games, we've won 2, I think.
It is. It'll be an interesting game. Look forward all week to see Jason Staples drop his video breakdowns. There's a lot to. Jason sort of puts it together in a way that the normal folks like myself can understand why that happened, not what happened. We saw what happened. Jason will break down the why.
It's going to be a tough week to pick from a wide selection of possibilities.
Hey,
I wouldn't pick any plays where we punted the ball. I would leave those on the cutting room floor.
It is always, wins or losses, you still got to break down. We always got to go back to the film. Jason will handle that. Shot and Vip later today or tomorrow morning, and then, of course, Noon Dish on the beat, and the next game plan, Georgia Tech next Thursday, and maybe a next level or two in there as well. Good day to be on Inside Carolina, North Carolina, 8 o'clock Saturday night. Buck, Jason, I'm Tommy. It's been the day after. Shout out to Congruity and Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring us. Everybody be safe.